I didn't plan for it to matter as much as it did. It was supposed to be a quick visit. That's how my brother said it. Like something you could fold into the day without consequence. He had to run an errand nearby, the kids were restless. And my place was on the way. I remember hesitating, not because of anything specific, just a vague resistance I couldn't justify without sounding unreasonable. So I said yes. I showed them where the snacks were, pointed out the living room, and made a brief, almost apologetic comment about my office. Just that it wasn't a play area. My brother waved it off with a distracted nod, already halfway into his phone. The kids didn't respond at all. The first sound I noticed wasn't loud. It was a dull, irregular tapping. Then something heavier. Then a silence that felt like it had shape. I walked down the hallway slower than I needed to. The door to my office was open. At first, it didn't register as damage. It looked like displacement. Things out of place, cables pulled loose, objects tilted at wrong angles. Then the details settled. A monitor cracked diagonally, like a fault line. My audio interface on the floor, casing split. One of the kids was holding a lens, turning it in their hands like it was a toy kaleidoscope. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say anything immediately. I just stepped forward and took the lens from their hands. My brother appeared behind me, glanced around, and exhaled like he'd walked into a mild inconvenience. "They're kids," he said. "What did you expect?" It wasn't defensive, it was casual. Like the conclusion had already been agreed upon somewhere else. I nodded once. I remember that. Not agreement, just acknowledgement, like I'd heard him clearly. I spent the next hour quietly moving things back into place, or what resembled place. I didn't ask them to leave. They left on their own, eventually. The visit dissolving as casually as it had begun. That night, I made a list. Not emotional, just practical equipment costs. Replacement estimates. Lost work time. It came to just over 14,000. I stared at the number longer than I expected to. The next morning, I called my parents. I don't know why I thought it would clarify anything. My mother sighed before I even finished explaining. "They're children," she said. "You can't hold them to adult standards." My father's voice came in after, steady, almost bored. "Don't be dramatic, things can be replaced." There was a pause where I could have argued. I didn't. I said, "Okay," and ended the call. The decision wasn't sudden. It felt more like something that had been forming for a while and finally had a shape. I filed a police report first. Not because I expected anything dramatic from it, but because it created a record that existed outside of opinion. Then I filed in small claims court. I included everything, photos, receipts, timestamps, even a rough breakdown of how the damage affected my work. I didn't tell my family. When the notice reached my brother, he called me immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Then another, then a message, "Are you serious right now?" I listened to it once, then set the phone down. The process moved slowly, but it moved. Dates were assigned, documents were revealed. Nothing emotional. Nothing personal, just procedure. What shifted things wasn't the case itself, it was the lease. The house my brother was living in wasn't his. It had been under my name for years, a practical arrangement from a time when he needed stability, and I had the means to provide it. It had never been an issue. Rent was paid, mostly on time. We didn't talk about it much. But the lease was expiring in 30 days. I didn't mention it to him right away. I just reviewed the terms, spoke with the landlord, and made it clear I wouldn't be renewing. There wasn't a confrontation, no announcement. Just paperwork. He found out a week later. This time when he called, I answered. He didn't start angry. That was the first difference. His voice was tight. Controlled in a way I hadn't heard before. He talked about timing, about the kids, about how difficult it would be to find something else on short notice. I listened. At some point, he said, "You're really going to do this over some broken equipment?" There it was again, the same framing, smaller now, but still intact. I took a breath, not to steady myself, but to make sure I said it cleanly. "Don't be dramatic." There was a silence that didn't resolve. He didn't argue after that. The call ended without anything resembling agreement. The court date came and the judgment in my favor. Not surprising, given the documentation. He would have to pay in installments if necessary. We didn't speak about it, The house was vacated on time. I did a final walkthrough alone. It was clean mostly. A few marks on the walls, minor things. Nothing that required a list. I stood in the empty living room for a while longer than I needed to. It didn't feel like victory. There was no moment where anything clicked into place or resolved neatly. If anything, it felt quieter. Like something had been reduced to its simplest form. My office is functional again. Not identical, but usable. I replaced what needed to be replaced. The door stays closed now. No one's asked to visit. I haven't offered. Sometimes I think about how easily it could have gone differently. A conversation, an apology, even a partial acknowledgement. Something small enough to keep everything where it was. But that didn't happen. And now there's a kind of distance that doesn't need to be enforced. It just exists, settled and unspoken. It turns out that boundaries don't always arrive as declarations. Sometimes they arrive as paperwork.